In this panel, there are two channels being recorded. The top panel, labeled biceps, is for the electrical activity recorded from the biceps muscle, the red trace. The bottom channel is labeled as force. This is measuring the force produced isometrically with an elbow flexor contraction, also a red trace. To determine the active threshold, we've set a horizontal line, the black line here, at approximately 5% of the individual's maximal voluntary contraction force. The goal then is to have the individual contract the elbow flexor musculature with the strength required for the force to match that horizontal line, or that 5% of maximal contraction line. Once that force is produced and maintained, a pulse is given either through the transcranial magnetic stimulator, transmastoid electrical stimulation, or Erb's point stimulation to elicit a response recorded from the muscle in the top channel. The response recorded from the muscle has a stimulation artifact, which is a very large amplitude non-biological signal, followed by the biological signal. By zooming in on the top trace, where the response was evoked, you can clearly see a stimulation artifact, which is followed by a biological signal recorded from the muscle. You then place vertical cursors on either side of this evoked response, being sure to include the highest point of the response and the lowest point. We then measure what's called the peak-to-peak amplitude of that response, which is from the highest point to the lowest point. Once you determine the correct stimulation intensity to be used, you can then run a configuration which has multiple frames that can be averaged. You can then assess the peak-to-peak amplitude from the average of all of the frames recorded.